The Galactic Empire considered itself the pinnacle of civilization, ruling vast stretches of the galaxy with unmatched technological prowess. Their ships, sleek and glowing, cut through the void of space like blades, while their armies boasted weapons that could disintegrate a target with a single pulse. To them, Earth was nothing more than a primitive rock, barely worth notice. When the humans resisted their initial attempts at diplomacy, a thinly veiled demand for subjugation, the Empire decided to send a clear message. The broadcast came with all the pomp and arrogance typical of the Empire. Standing atop a grandiose podium, flanked by towering holograms of imperial might, High Commander Thalrax sneered as he addressed humanity. "Earthlings," he began, his voice dripping with disdain. "Your so-called weapons are relics, laughable compared to even our weakest units. Your resistance is not bravery, it is ignorance." A montage of human military equipment played behind him, emphasizing tanks, jets, and missiles. Laughter rippled through the alien audience. To prove their point, the Empire deployed a contingent of their elite ground forces to Earth. These soldiers, clad in reflective armor and wielding plasma rifles, descended in shimmering transports, their arrival heralded by thunderous sonic booms. Their mission wasn't merely conquest, it was to humiliate. The Imperial commanders wanted humanity to kneel, not out of fear, but out of the crushing realization that they were hopelessly outmatched. On Earth, preparations were chaotic but determined. Military leaders scrambled to mobilize their limited forces, knowing full well the technological disparity they faced. Among the assets deployed was an old M1 Abrams tank, a machine whose reputation had peaked decades prior. It was a symbol of resilience and strength, but even its most ardent supporters doubted its relevance against such advanced foes. Yet, with no other options, it was pressed into service. The human soldiers who manned the tank knew the odds were against them. They'd watched the broadcasts, seen the destruction wrought on other planets. But the choice was clear: fight or perish. The Abrams rumbled to life, its powerful engine a sharp contrast to the silent hovercraft of the Imperial forces. Though antiquated by modern standards, its crew treated it with reverence, knowing it was their best chance to hold the line. As the Imperial forces approached, their air of superiority was palpable. Hovering battle units glided effortlessly over the terrain, their energy shields glowing faintly in the dim light. Soldiers marched in formation, their confidence bordering on complacency. In their eyes, the humans' resistance was not an act of defiance but one of desperation, a final, futile gesture before their inevitable defeat. The stage was set. On one side stood the Galactic Empire, armed with technology that defied comprehension. On the other, humanity, clinging to relics of the past and sheer determination. The Empire had come to mock, to dominate, and to remind humanity of its place. But the humans had one lesson of their own: never underestimate the will to survive. The Imperial forces descended upon the battlefield with a precision that bordered on theatrical. Their shimmering transport ships hovered momentarily before releasing squads of soldiers in perfect formation. Each soldier was equipped with plasma rifles that hummed menacingly, their energy shields flickering faintly as they advanced. Drones buzzed above them, scanning for threats, but what they found were human defenders crouched behind rudimentary barricades, clutching outdated rifles and peering nervously at the sky. The Imperial commander, a towering figure encased in reflective armor, barked a single order. A barrage of plasma fire erupted, tearing through the makeshift defenses in moments. The human soldiers scattered, some returning fire, their bullets bouncing harmlessly off shields, others falling back to regroup. To the Empire, it was nothing more than a display of dominance, a reminder of their overwhelming power. The commander sneered, turning to his officers. "These primitives are hardly worth the effort," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. In the chaos, the M1 Abrams rolled into position. Its crew, tense but focused, maneuvered the tank with practiced efficiency. To the Imperial forces, it was a curious sight, a hulking relic from a bygone era. One of the Imperial soldiers pointed at it, laughing. "That's their answer. A metal box on tracks." The others joined in the laughter, their confidence unshaken. The Abrams' main gun fired. The sound was deafening, a thunderous roar that cut through the battlefield. The shell streaked across the field, striking one of the Empire's hovering vehicles. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, with a brilliant flash, the vehicle's energy shield collapsed, and the craft exploded in a ball of fire. The laughter stopped. The Imperial forces hesitated, their arrogance giving way to confusion. Another round fired from the Abrams, this time targeting a cluster of soldiers. The ground shook as the shell impacted, scattering debris and throwing armored troops off their feet. Their shields, so effective against energy weapons, proved vulnerable to the sheer kinetic force of the tank's shells. The Imperial commander snarled, waving his arm to signal a counterattack. Drones swooped toward the Abrams, firing bursts of plasma, but the tank's thick armor absorbed the hits. Infantry advanced, their rifles lighting up the battlefield with streaks of blue energy, but the Abrams pressed forward, unyielding. Its machine gun roared to life, cutting down drones and soldiers alike. The battlefield shifted. What had begun as a show of Imperial dominance was now a desperate struggle to neutralize a threat they hadn't anticipated. The Abrams crew, emboldened by their success, used the terrain to their advantage, maneuvering between hills and rubble to avoid being surrounded. They fired methodically, each shot precise, each target chosen for maximum impact. For the first time, the Imperial forces felt something unfamiliar: vulnerability. Their shields, their weapons, their formations, none of it seemed to matter against this relic of human engineering. The Abrams was more than a machine. It was a testament to humanity's ability to adapt, to endure, and to fight back when pushed to the brink. The Empire's confidence was cracking, and the tide of the battle was beginning to turn. The battlefield became a chessboard of shifting tactics, with the Abrams at the center of every human move. The Imperial forces, now fully aware of the tank's capabilities, adjusted their strategy. A wave of heavy infantry advanced, their shields reinforced by portable generators. Behind them, armored hovercraft repositioned to flank the human defenders, while aerial drones coordinated their attacks from above. The Empire's response was swift and calculated, but their arrogance lingered. They still underestimated the human capacity for adaptation. The Abrams crew worked with a rhythm born of desperation and discipline. Communication was sharp, concise, each member performing their role with precision. They knew the odds were stacked against them. Plasma fire continued to rain down, scorching the earth around the tank, but they remained undeterred. Using the terrain to their advantage, they maneuvered the Abrams to higher ground, forcing the Empire's forces into awkward firing angles. As the Imperial infantry closed in, the tank's machine gun roared to life again, mowing down soldiers who relied too heavily on their shields. Human ground troops coordinated with the Abrams, setting traps and ambushes to exploit the Empire's rigid formations. Landmines buried beneath the soil tore through the advancing lines, sowing chaos among the disciplined ranks. The Imperial commander, watching the battle unfold from a distance, seethed with frustration. The Abrams fired another shell, this time targeting one of the hovercraft attempting a flanking maneuver. The explosion sent the vehicle spiraling into the ground, its debris scattering over the battlefield. The Imperial troops hesitated, their confidence shaken further. Their energy shields, once considered impenetrable, were proving to be a glaring weakness. On the human side, morale surged. The Abrams was no longer just a machine, it was a symbol of defiance. Each successful strike against the Empire's forces reminded the soldiers of what they were fighting for: survival, freedom, and the right to exist on their own terms. The human defenders pressed forward, using guerrilla tactics to outwit the technologically superior enemy. The Imperial forces, for all their advancements, struggled to adapt. Their doctrine had been built on the assumption that their overwhelming firepower and advanced technology would guarantee victory. They weren't prepared for an enemy that fought unpredictably, leveraging every resource, no matter how crude. One of the drones attempted a direct assault on the Abrams, launching a concentrated plasma strike at its turret. The impact scorched the tank's exterior, but its armor held. In response, the crew fired a machine gun burst, shredding the drone in mid-air. The Empire had designed their weapons to face other advanced civilizations, not to withstand the brute force and durability of human engineering. The commander issued desperate orders, calling for his forces to regroup and focus all firepower on the tank. But the Abrams crew anticipated the move. They repositioned once again, luring the Imperial forces into a narrow valley where their formations became a liability. With limited room to maneuver, the Empire's forces found themselves trapped, their advanced technology rendered ineffective by terrain and human strategy. The Abrams unleashed another shell, its target an energy shield generator positioned at the rear of the Imperial line. The explosion disabled the shields of an entire battalion, leaving them exposed. Human troops seized the opportunity, advancing with renewed vigor. The Empire had come to crush humanity, but now their forces were being systematically dismantled. For the first time, the Imperial troops began to fall back, their confidence replaced by an unfamiliar sense of dread. They had underestimated humanity, and the cost of their arrogance was growing with every passing moment. The Abrams, battered but unbroken, pressed on, embodying the resilience and ingenuity of the people it defended. The Empire had all the advantages, but in this fight, it was the humans who refused to lose. The battlefield was a smoking ruin of shattered technology and scorched earth, but the fight was far from over. The Empire, humiliated by the unexpected resistance, deployed their ultimate weapon, a colossal war walker, towering over the battlefield like a mechanical titan. Its legs crushed debris beneath them as its energy cannons charged, emitting a low hum that echoed like a warning. The Imperial commander watched with grim satisfaction, confident that this single machine would end the rebellion and restore their dominance. The Abrams crew saw the war walker emerge, its shadow stretching across the valley. The sight was daunting. The machine's energy shields shimmered with a power that dwarfed anything they'd faced so far. Its armor gleamed, reinforced with alloys the Empire had perfected over centuries of conquest. The message was clear: this wasn't just a weapon. It was a declaration of the Empire's supremacy. But the Abrams crew didn't hesitate. Their tank, battered and scorched from the relentless onslaught, roared to life once more. They maneuvered carefully, using the terrain as cover while the walker's cannons unleashed devastating plasma blasts that tore craters into the ground. Each blast shook the battlefield, the sheer force a reminder of what they were up against. The first shots from the Abrams struck the walker's shield, rippling harmlessly across its surface. The crew adjusted, targeting weak points they had identified during the battle. They fired at the walker's joints, hoping to disable its mobility, but the shield absorbed each round. The Empire's commander observed, smugly confident that the tank's resistance would soon be silenced. Yet, humanity's strength had never been in brute force alone. It was in strategy, creativity, and persistence. The Abrams crew worked in perfect sync, coordinating with the remaining human troops. Spotters on the ground identified patterns in the walker's movement and firing cycles. Using this information, the crew repositioned, waiting for the right moment. The walker's cannons fired again, narrowly missing the tank. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground, but the Abrams pressed forward. The crew targeted the shield generator, a module partially exposed on the walker's back. The first shell struck, creating a visible distortion in the shield. The second shell hit the same spot, causing the shield to flicker. A third round pierced through, striking the generator directly. The shield collapsed in a cascade of light, leaving the walker exposed. The Imperial commander's confidence evaporated as the Abrams seized the moment. The crew aimed for the walker's knees, firing shells with pinpoint accuracy. The first leg buckled, sparks flying as the joint failed. The second leg followed, sending the walker crashing to the ground in a deafening explosion of metal and fire. The Imperial forces, witnessing the destruction of their most powerful weapon, faltered. Panic spread through their ranks as human troops rallied, pushing forward with renewed strength. What had been a fight for survival became a rout. The Empire's troops, once so confident, now retreated in disarray, their air of invincibility shattered. In the aftermath, the Abrams sat motionless, its engine idling softly as the smoke cleared. The crew, exhausted but victorious, emerged to the sound of cheers from the remaining human soldiers. Their tank, a relic mocked and underestimated, had become the cornerstone of a battle that would be remembered for generations. The Empire's fleet withdrew, leaving behind the wreckage of their hubris. Their message of dominance had been met with a response they hadn't anticipated: humanity's resilience. The Galactic Empire had learned a harsh lesson that day, one they wouldn't soon forget. On Earth, against all odds, a single tank had turned the tide of war and reminded the galaxy why humanity should never be underestimated.